Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, and I want to welcome you to this conversation about rewriting. It's titled, Is Your Script Missing This? Which I think is an incredibly important question to be asking. If you think about it, there's a lot of times where uh, you don't know for sure what's missing or what's not missing until you get to a producer. So today we're going to solve that problem in advance so that you're completely ready. So here we go. First, here's what we'll cover. What's missing from the rewrite process? That's going to be the first question. We're going to talk about how to rewrite in passes, which is a much stronger and more professional strategy. We will then look at some key components of the rewrite process so that you can make sure that you have them and you're using them. And finally, we'll talk about the upcoming class, the 10-week professional rewrite class that has made a huge difference for writers who are trying to break into the industry and for writers who are winning contests. So let's just first start with this. You're looking and thinking about the rewrite process. And I did this about 15 years ago or so. I had taken a class before I ever started teaching. I had taken a class on rewriting, and this lady taught this particular process. Essentially, you went to the beginning of your script. You started at page 1. You read through, you looked at the dialogue, the description, and the word choices. And as you did, you made whatever changes came to you, right? And so I learned that, went through her class, and used it to write and rewrite a script. When I got to the end, I'd done about 10 different drafts doing this. I'd gone through it over and over, starting at page 1, working all the way to the last page, gotten to the point where it was like people were saying, wow, that's a really well-written script. So we marketed it to producers. I got it into 24 production companies, and about 3 weeks later, all of them had passed. I called up a couple of them and said, let me just ask you, you had a chance to look at my script. Did you have any thoughts? Is there anything I should know? And what they told me was that something was missing beneath this surface. Now, let me pause for a second and just clarify the survey I sent out. So at that point, I sent that survey out to other writers. And what it turned out was 99 out of 104 that responded told me that was their rewrite process, that their rewrite process was the one that I had learned. And it was the majority of what they did. It was most of their drafts. Problem with that is it has a tendency to lock in whatever you've done, right? So you have created this script that is essentially worded perfectly. And because it's worded perfectly, it makes us feel that it's done. What those producers told me was that there were all kinds of problems beneath the surface. Now, let me just show you how I think about rewriting right now. If you look again, the model that I had just used showed up in steps 5 and 6, right? It's the words, the dialogue, and the description. But there's much more to it. And this is what I found out from those producers. It was missing steps 1 through 4, steps 7 and 8. So these are the ones that actually changed everything for us. It's one of the reasons why a lot of our writers have made deals. We've had over 500 deals made over the last about 5 years. We've had at least 100 made in the last year that we haven't reported yet. So let me just walk you through this. At the bottom, you have the story, right? The story begins at page 1 and it ends all the way at whatever your final page is. It's present every single moment. Now, the story isn't just, the concept. It's also your structure, your plot, how your theme plays out in the midst of this, right? It's the journey these characters take. So it's incredibly important that it's working. The feedback or the structure that I was using for rewriting didn't actually consider that. Then above that, you have your characters, right? And these are the people we're going to go on the journey with. They need to be perfect for this story. They need to be somebody that we connect with early on, that we're constantly engaged with, that we are worried about them as they're going through this journey, that there's deep layers that are revealed along the way, right? There's all kinds of things that you can build into character that will make your writing absolutely amazing. Above that is situation. And this is something that I think is an untapped opportunity for a lot of people. If you look through your script and you see very many scenes that are basically two people talking to each other, unless their conversation is something that is a threat to their lives, very likely you're missing a situation. And a situation is the circumstances of this scene that in one way or another threaten one or more of those characters, right? The situation itself, when you have a cool situation, you can take the exact same dialogue, put it in an amazing situation, and the audience will be transfixed. If you take that dialogue and you leave it in a scene with two talking heads, well, you're just missing something so important. And this is just one of those things that we've had a lot of people who have looked through their script and they'll find 10 to 15 talking head scenes. Go back and change 5 or 6 of those to intriguing or engaging situations, and it changes the whole feel of the script. So it's worth it. And then above that is the action. Now, I'm going to say there's 2 kinds of action. There's other ways we can think about it, but I'm going to say there is meaningless action and meaningful action. Meaningless action doesn't mean something bad about you as a writer. It just often means what you've done is what actors call busy work, right? You have given these characters something to do. They're sipping off of their drink, right? They're cutting the meat while they're talking. They're playing pool while they're having a conversation, or they're just walking, right? The action gives no meaning. Or you could have meaningful action, which means the action really delivers the meaning of the scene. So that's really important. If you can build in meaningful action, like let's say you got a character and they come into work, and their boss comes in and says, "I'm sorry, we're having to let you go. So pack up your stuff and I wish you the best in your next job," or whatever, right? They can have whatever conversation they want at that point. If they're just standing there talking, that's meaningless. Even if the boss hands the red slip over or whatever, that doesn't have very much meaning. It does have a little bit of meaning. But let's say you chose to do it a different way. Your character comes in, and when they get to their office, they see somebody else packing their stuff. And they're like, "What are you doing?" And they start trying to unpack it. And the other person is packing it. Now they're fighting back and forth. Now the security guards are here, right? They're being escorted out the door. And that's when they find out for sure they've been fired. Now, that's a different situation, right? It's like the action. We could turn off the dialogue. We could turn off the sound, and we get what's going on. The action carries the meaning. So sometimes on this level right here, you can create something that's absolutely amazing and can make a tremendous difference. Then, of course, you've still got dialogue and words. Those are all very important. And now we go to number 7, which is interest. This has become more and more and more important in this industry. If we back up, to before people had cell phones, before you had basically the equivalent of a movie screen in your living room, before they allowed you to even see the movie until 3 months after it had been in the theater. If we back up to way back then, it was like we didn't have all these distractions in our life. At the present moment, people are so distracted that the whole industry is concerned about how interesting you are making every single scene. Your job is to make sure that not only do they switch the channel to one of 500 other channels, but they don't pull up their cell phone and start looking at it and forget about the movie or your show, whichever it is. Right. So interest and how you make the scenes interesting is going to be very, very important to your success. And then number 8, subtext. And you will notice subtext, here's the surface. Subtext is everything beneath the surface, right? And that's an easy way to say it. What really subtext means is the deeper meaning. I'm going to walk you through some things about that that'll help you today. But if you look at this surface line, it's like a lot of action plays above the deeper meaning. It's on the surface. Somebody says, hey, let's go for a drive, and then they get in the car. The action and the dialogue actually matched. It was all 100% on the surface. But if they ask you to get in the car and you notice that they've got guns and they've got, they've got a shovel in the back and stuff like that, it's like, all right, there's some deeper meaning playing there. And it's going to create a lot of suspicion and worry, and who knows where it's going. So that becomes action with subtext built into it. Okay. Now that we've said all of that, the question here is which of these steps are missing from your rewrite process? And by missing, and you want to think about this, you really want to think about this because it makes a difference in the ultimate quality. By missing, I don't mean, well, did you think about the story at some point? Or did you even think about your characters? Of course you did. I mean, do you have specific processes to make sure that your characters are being expressed in the most powerful ways they can, that they show up in every scene that they're present, that they are the most interesting characters, and that they fit this story incredibly well, right? Do you have processes to make sure each of these things show up in the best way they possibly can? If you don't yet, well, luckily you're in the right place. That's what we're here for tonight. So let's kind of jump into it. Our purpose when we're doing a rewrite is to increase the marketability and make sure you have a higher quality read. Now, I'll tell you, most people do focus on a higher quality read. Very few writers actually focus on increasing marketability. And that's just come from looking at scripts that show up in contest where I've been a judge. It's like, if they've had 1,000 scripts in the midst of it, and I'm only reading the top 10, and I look through and 80% of them have marketability issues, I'm guessing that a lot of the others also do. So this is really, really important if you're trying to break into the industry. So if you're trying to get an agent, a manager, or a producer to make your movie, marketability is incredibly important. So our simple strategy, which we're going to talk about here, is rewriting in passes that each take care of the key things that you need. So we're going to do passes instead of just edits. And there's a difference. I'll walk you through that. But basically what you're doing is you're looking at every scene and you're asking, how can I build in more character? And you take one thing and you run it all the way across the script. So if I'm looking at my lead character, let's say I'm looking at my protagonist, and let's say that she's somebody who is incredibly capable, but at the same time, she also has a lot of anxiety. Let's just pretend. Is that showing up in every time we see her? Right. And by the way, I'll have a whole profile that will have a whole list of all the things that make her special and important. But I just wanted to point to those two. Are they showing up? Right. If we put her in a scene, does she come across as capable? Does she come across as also somebody who is dealing with anxiety and either knows it or doesn't know it? And if not, then how can you build more in? And I would take that profile and I go all the way across that entire script, looking at every single time she's on the screen and asking, is something from this profile showing up? And if it is, spectacular, especially if you like it. If it isn't, then that's another opportunity to elevate the quality of your script. So, by the way, every time you find something that's missing, please don't think something bad about yourself or anything else. Celebrate, because what it means is that your script is already better in the future. Your script is going to be more successful because you found that thing that's missing. So let me point to 4 specific improvements that I think are often overlooked. And at the same time, I'll give you a safety tip. So here we go. The first one, I want to give you 3 ways to make your journey stronger. And the reason for this is because if you have a strong journey, your audience joins in the beginning and they go all the way through with you because they're connected, right? They're on that journey. They want to know what's going to happen, right? So they're going to go with you all the way through. If you have a journey that has problems, somewhere along the way, they're going to get disconnected and they're going to be gone. So first thing, check to see, do you have both an internal and an external journey? Now, I'll tell you why this is important. At one point, I had a class with about 60 people in it. I asked all of them to tell me, and we went through, we really did this. We went through and I just had them say, I have a strong internal, external, or both journey. It turned out that, and this was just their opinions, only about 15% of them had what they would say is a strong both internal and external journey. And that's important. And what I told them up front was, I said, if you tell me you have both, I'm going to ask you to tell me about both. 15%, right? So maybe I was calling them on the carpet. Maybe I had them a little worried, but only 15%. But almost everyone had one of the journeys that was really strong. So what I found out right off the bat was part of it depends on genre, right? If you're writing a drama, then of course you're going to be focusing very intently on the internal journey. If you are writing an action story, you're going to probably focus a lot on the external journey. The problem is if you're missing the other one, the audience isn't going to feel connected. They're going to actually drop at some point. You need both. And by the way, let's say you're doing a drama and you have an incredible internal story. Well, you just need an external journey that matches. It doesn't have to be the perfect external journey, but you need an external journey so that the audience is connected in both ways. So you might have 90% success here, and this one might be a 10% or something like that. But at least you have it, right? It's incredibly important. I have a tendency to try to go to a 50-50. It's one of the things I like about like Ryan Reynolds movies. Ryan Reynolds spends a lot of time with the screenwriters. He makes sure that certain things show up. Most of his movies are action stories with external journeys, but he's made sure the internal is there so that we experience it. So that's just really important. Also, the purpose of a journey is to challenge your protagonist specifically, and maybe other characters, to their core. So you want to be looking, what's the big challenge that they have in this story that makes their life really difficult and is pretty much, if you're talking protagonist, pretty much it should be almost impossible for them to do. It should challenge something so deep in them that they don't know that they're going to be able to make it through this journey. And if you create that kind of situation, again, we as the audience are so much more engaged. And then your job is to force that character further outside their box with each act. That means when you go from act one to act two, you just caused this character to step outside. They were never going to go on this journey. Somehow they got forced into it. They got locked into it. They made a mistake, whatever it was. And because of that, we are going to worry about them more, and we're going to wonder how they're going to make it through. When you get to the midpoint, it should do it again. It should take them further outside of their box, so outside of their normal way of being. If you do that, we're going to be so much more connected. And by the time we get to that third act where they're having the final conflict, fighting against their antagonist, right? When we get to that point and it's so far outside of what's possible for them, we are going to be deeply, deeply engaged. So what this does is it creates unpredictability, and it causes the audience to wonder and to worry, which is your job, right? All right. The second thing, build subtext into every scene. Here's how badly this one was missing for me in my early writing days. I took a whole bunch of screenwriting classes before I ever started creating expert models on screenwriting. And with every one of them, I went up to the teacher at one point and I said, how do you create subtext? And I, honest to God, I asked at least 10 teachers, screenwriting teachers, that question. The best answer I got was them saying, well, it just emerges when you know your characters. And I got to tell you, that answer completely sucks. That doesn't tell you how to do anything when it comes to subtext. So that was what really happened was this. I was in the midst of doing I was attending a class, and this other writer sitting next to me knew me, and he says, Hal, you know how to create expert models, right? And I said, yes, I've been creating them for corporations for 15 years. And he goes, what if you created an expert model on subtext? And I was like, oh, I guess I could do that, because no one seemed to know, not even the teachers. I couldn't get anybody to explain it to me. So we did that, by the way. And I'm not pitching a subtext class right now, but I just want you to know it's like this. If you're not feeling confident about your ability to create subtext in every single scene, don't feel bad. That's pretty normal. It was one of my big problems. So here's the easy way to think about it. First, there is a surface meaning and a deeper meaning, right? When you have a character who says one thing and does another, like if a character tells you, like let's say we've got a character in a store and the boss says, we've been having problems with theft. Can you keep an eye out on these other people and make sure that nobody's stealing anything? And let's say the guy says, yes, absolutely, I'll take care of that. And now we watch the boss walk out the door, and that character reaches into the cash register and pulls out a $20 bill and puts it in his pocket, right? There's a surface meaning, he's going to make sure nobody else is stealing. And there's a deeper meaning, he's the one who's doing the stealing. So that's just a real simple version on that, right? But the easiest thing to do is just to look and see, do you have both? And do you have both that one of them doesn't say what the other says? If your surface meaning and your deeper meaning is the same thing, there's no subtext there. We're still on the surface. So keep that in mind. That was one of the big problems that I had along the way. Once I learned this, it was just like so much easier. Uh, your job is to build subtext also on multiple levels. Sometimes it might be like, let's say we take that same scene, surface meaning. Boss just asked this employee to keep an eye out for who might be stealing. Deeper meaning, now that character does steal the $20. A deeper meaning beneath that, right? This is multiple levels. The police come in, and it turned out the whole thing was a setup. The boss has been watching him on a closed circuit TV camera or whatever. And so there's like at least two levels beneath the surface. That stuff's pretty easy to build in again if you're actually honoring this. Let me just give you some ideas. One way is with character subtext. They've got a secret, a wound. They're doing something covert. They're deceitful. They're withholding. They're afraid. Could be any of those kinds of things. And by the way, subtext doesn't have to be a bad thing. It doesn't have to be somebody lying or stealing. You could have a character that their whole subtext is that they're afraid to say something to their boss. They're afraid to tell the truth because that boss doesn't have a thick skin and can't listen to any kind of criticism. Could be that kind of thing. Situational subtext, right? There's a misinterpretation going on that may or may not have been intentional. There's superior position. The audience knows something that the characters don't. There's deception. There's sabotage. These are situations. And then action subtext. There's action that is different or opposite of the dialogue, right? So if the dialogue, and that's basically what I just showed you just a moment ago, but you could actually have somebody, the boss could be saying, I want you to keep an eye on things, and while the character's actually stealing stuff right there in front of them. So there's lots of ways to do that. Okay. Number 3. Make every scene more interesting. And I told you before, this is something that the industry needs because their job is to keep the attention. The streamers want to keep you on those streamers. They don't want you to go to some other streamer. So great scenes are built through interest techniques. And, a lot of times, if you're just somebody who's natural at creating incredibly interesting scenes, the way you'll know that is because people tell you, oh my God, your scenes are so interesting. But if you don't have that going on yet, it's really easy. You just start looking at how could I use a different interest technique, or how could I build more interest techniques into these scenes? This is something that pros are thinking. Now, they may not say that they're thinking it, and they may actually not even know. But I've interviewed over 100 A-list screenwriters, and about 40 of them, I ask them specifically about how much do they focus on making every scene as interesting as they can. And it was a big thing. They think a lot about it. They rewrite scenes over and over to make them more interesting. So here are some of the techniques that you can use. And these, as soon as I say them, you'll get it. Surprise. You create a surprise, the audience is more interested. You create suspense. If we are worried that something bad is going to happen to this character, we're in suspense. If you create that, we're going to be engaged. You build in a twist that sends things in a different direction. You create intrigue, and intrigue basically means that there is something under the situation, something under the surface that is underhanded, that we're looking and going, wait a minute, something bad's happening here. I need to figure it out, right? If you just take these and mystery, you build in a mystery that the audience wants to engage in. Here's 5 of, I think we have 20 different interest techniques that we use. Here's 5 of them. And If you're just looking at pretty much every scene and you say, how am I making this scene interesting? Is it just, I'm hoping that they'll want to hear what my characters say? Or have I specifically built in something that is designed to cause people to be interested? If you haven't, really consider it because basically you've got to go way beyond you being interested. Because the audience they didn't come in knowing anything about you. They didn't come in necessarily, in some cases, even wanting to watch this. Like if you think about it, how many times have you turned on a show or a streamer and you weren't even sure if you wanted to watch it. You were just going to watch the first 10 minutes to decide if you did want to watch it. If they used a lot of interest techniques and they did it in a way that worked, by the end of that 10 minutes, you were deeply engaged and you're going to stay until the end of the movie. So that's why this stuff is so important. Number 4, big picture improvements that make a script more pitchable. So this is when I was talking about marketability, this is incredibly important. In this industry, you're going to come in and the first thing that's going to happen is in order to get your script read, you've got to pitch it to somebody who then requests it and ask to read it, right? If you're trying to get an agent, a manager, if you're trying to get a producer to read it, if you're trying to get a director to read it, any of those, right? You've got to come in with a pitch. And for them, the pitch isn't you telling the story. The pitch is them going, oh my God, I can sell this, right? So there's something that causes them to believe that they could get funding for it. They could get actors. They could get a director to sign on. They could get a streamer to say yes to this. There's got to be something built in that you're telling them in the pitch that will cause that. Now, by the way, if you go in and say, hey, I think this will sell. I think streamers will love this. That doesn't help. So be careful and don't tell anybody it's going to be an Academy Award or any of those kinds of things. Inside this industry, if you pitch that way, they'll think you don't know what you're doing. So just don't do any of those. What it comes down to is this. It's all stuff that you're building into your script, right? You want to identify the big hook of this story. What is the thing that makes your story unique in a significant way? If you tell us a story and we go, oh, that's just Die Hard, you need to be able to say, well, it's like Die Hard, but, and now whatever you say in the next sentence, that producer needs to go, oh my God, you made it something we've never seen before. I can sell that, right? So it needs to be something that's unique in a significant way. Also, the other thing I would do is I'd go through and make a list of the most interesting things in your story before you end up writing your pitch. My experience has been, and this has been my experience with my stories, and it's also been my experience with a lot of writers, that if you've just finished writing your script, you have, you've written 100 to 110 pages plus or minus. There's 1,000 details in there. You've worked with this character journey over and over and over. You have all this stuff in your mind. And a lot of times people will just naturally kind of write a book report of the story because they've been writing it, right? So make a list of the most interesting things. What are the most interesting things? What are the things that will hook somebody? What are the things that will surprise them? How did you create conflict in a way we haven't seen? What's the midpoint that everybody's going to be talking about, right? Go through and make a list of the 10 or 20 most interesting things having to do with your project, and then build those into the pitch. Don't tell us more details. Tell us something that has us going, oh my God, that's incredible. Now, here's a safety tip. It's easy to focus on wordsmithing, and I've actually, for some people, and this has included me, it took me a long time to break myself of wordsmithing an early draft. But for some people, wordsmithing is so ingrained, they're so worried that every word has to be perfect, that even on a first draft, they'll be wordsmithing. Don't do it. Don't put your creativity into wordsmithing until you have everything else working. You can always wordsmith. That's something that you've already got. You already know what you're doing on that. You've probably spent a lot of time on it. So it's not going to go away. But if you're on a second or a third draft and you have problems beneath the surface, any of the things that we've talked about, don't spend a second wordsmithing. Instead, go solve that subtext problem. Go solve that interest problem. Go solve that structural problem. Do that without wordsmithing. It will make a huge difference for you. So basically, this is what I'm saying is a full rewrite. There's one thing that's missing from this. And I'll tell you about that in just a moment here. But the first thing is, I would look at your entire script through this. I would just start with the story. Does everything about this story work? If I laid out my structure right this moment, is it working? Right? Are my characters, your lead characters, not your supporting characters, are your lead characters coming across as amazing? If your supporting characters are better than your lead characters, that's a problem inside the industry. So you want to be careful about that. That makes it hard to get actors, major actors. Do you have unique and interesting and challenging situations all the way through? Is there action that is actually meaningful in your scenes? And then, of course, dialogue. Is your dialogue interesting? Is it compelling? Does it have subtext built into it? Do you have interest techniques built into every single scene? That's important. And do you have subtext in every scene? This is the deeper meaning. This is the stuff that the audience is living, right? This is what's engaging them. These things need to be there. They absolutely need to be there. Now, there's one thing that is missing from this, and that is your pitch. And for a lot of people, they don't even write their pitch until they're absolutely completely done with the script and it's time to send it to somebody. What I learned to do, and I was working with a professional writer at one point. We had a project that we had gotten into Comedy Central. We had what looked like a deal with them. We were doing rewrites, and the professional writer, we were on draft 3, and he comes back and he said, "Let's create our pitch now." And I said, "The script isn't ready." And he goes, "I know. That's why we need to create the pitch." And so we created a pitch. And because of that pitch, when we did the rewrite on draft 4, it was 100% better. What the pitch did was allowed us to focus on the things that we were going to use to sell it. They made it really clear what the journey was about, what the characters were about, all of those kinds of things in a different way. So I would recommend that you create the pitch before you do any next draft. Now, if what you'd like to do is to, at some point, be doing well in contest, a finalist, a winner, or any of those kinds of things, if you would like to ever get an agent or a manager, or if you want to end up having movies made, I would recommend that you take a much, much stronger rewrite process that is specifically focused on all of those things. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about now. Let's talk real briefly about the upcoming class that is a professional level rewrite class. This class I completely revamped 3 months ago, based on exactly what's going on in the industry right now. It was based on a whole series of interviews that I did with people who producers and A-list writers who were willing to talk with me about what they wanted to see from writers. So this is the program, and I'll give you a special on it. Let me just get out of the way here. This is our professional level rewrite class that you will use on every script you ever write from now on. Once you learn this, you'll learn it with one script. So whatever script you have right now, whatever you're working on, bring that script into the class. And once you go through and you learn this particular rewrite process, you will be able to use it to rewrite any script you've already written and every script from this point on. This matches what managers want you to be doing. I've interviewed at least 60 different managers to talk about this. So let me just walk you through it. By the way, here's the regular price. I'll give you a special at the end of this that I think you'll feel really great about. So here we go. By the way, we've had winners at Nickel. I'm talking Nickel Fellowship. We've had 2 winners there. Austin, Page, Final Draft, Big Break Contest. Every one of them, after they've won, I've interviewed them. Each of them had been through this class, and they each said it made a significant difference in the quality of their writing and possibly why they ended up winning those. We've also had over 100 scripts that have come right through this that have been optioned. So I'm telling you that because you need to know this is not just a small thing. This is a program that has specifically been designed to help you take that step to professional. So here's the program. It's a 10-week long class. It's done in a series of lessons and videos. So the first one, pre-lesson, you're going to look at your script. You're going to make sure that you have an outline for that script, whatever draft you're on right now. You'll bring both of them in. Now, there's a lot of things we can do at the outline level when you're working with like 5 or 10 pages that is really hard to do at the full script level. So you're going to start by clarifying your pitch so that the rewrite pays off. So you are going to create a pitch right now that ultimately will be something you'll be telling producers. And then you make sure that everything you do in the rewrite process matches that. You're going to build genre conventions into your outline. This is one of the decisions a producer makes having to do with your script. They look and they go, does it deliver on the genre conventions? If it doesn't, that's a problem. So we're going to make sure those are there first. You will then elevate the structure until it is fantastic. Now, remember, the structure is a big part of your story. From there, you're going to then solve major problems inside your outline. We'll give you a whole list of those problems. You'll look through and see if any of them exist. And if they do, by the way, they'll stand out. It'll be pretty easy. And the job right now is while you've got this 5-page outline in front of you, fix it, right? And you can fix it so much easier there. At that point, then you'll work to elevate the beats of your story. And now we'll start looking at character. And so first, you're going to look at your character profiles. Now, if you don't have character profiles, this will be where you can actually build them and make sure that those characters are so strong. It also makes it easier for you to understand them and to make sure you deliver them as you write. You're then going to look at each character's individual story, right? And this, we've had a lot of people who have come in at this point and they'll say, well, I think my protagonist is amazing, but when I looked at the antagonist individual story, it wasn't that interesting. And it's like, okay, they had focused mainly on their protagonist. No problem. Now they know they'll just elevate that antagonist individual story. If you have another main character and their story, they only pop in when they need to be, maybe this is the chance to make that character a bigger part and a much more important part of the story. Then the job is to introduce your characters powerfully. And a lot of people think character introductions for lead characters really are just those 4 lines that you can say anything you want about the character. That's not true. when you introduce a lead character, like if you're talking to your protagonist, your antagonist, if there's another character that's part of a triangle, when you introduce that character, the entire scene is about making that character somebody we can't forget. Even if you say, well, it's an average character that's going to become somebody amazing, there's still something about them that needs to be presented powerfully. And that's your job to figure that out. And then you will match the outline to your script. And now for the second half, we're going to take this outline that is now about 100 to 200% better. And we're going to go back to the script and now do some things that will take it to a whole new level. First thing, you will look to rate the entertainment value of every scene. This is something that's like breakthrough stuff for many people. It's like the scenes that you've spent a lot of time on, that you've really worked on, they may have on a 1 to 10 scale, they may have an entertainment value of an 8, 9, or 10, right? They may be absolutely amazing. But what about the others? We've had so many people who got to this point and looked, and about 30% of their scenes were a 2 or a 3 or a 4. They were scenes where they were just trying to make sure that they told something, or they provided exposition, or they were a transition scene or something like that. Even those need to be highly entertaining. So, and as soon as you're aware of it and you go, oh, I need to focus on making this scene entertaining, don't worry, it'll come to you. We'll give you techniques for that. Then number 11, now we're adding meaningful action. And this again means action that delivers the meaning of the scene. So you will go through your entire script and you'll look for, where's that missing, right? And it'll show up, you'll find it. There'll be a certain amount of scenes. If you have 60 scenes, you may have 10 or more that don't have meaningful action. Every one of them is an opportunity to improve. Number 12, now you're going to look at your scene structures. And for a lot of people, this is something they've never thought of. In fact, what actually happens for a lot of people is they have like 3 main scene structures they write through. And so over time, if a reader's reading, they start to be able to predict what's going to happen from the very beginning of a scene, because there's only been 3 different scene structures. So we'll give you a bunch of different scene structures, and you can try on other ways to write scenes. This also increases the interest level of the scenes you improve. Then we're going to be talking about how to give your characters unique dialogue, and you will take your main characters, your lead characters through, and you'll look at every line of dialogue to see if they're truly unique and if they really do fit who that character is. Now, once we get to this one, this one actually is pretty amazing. How do you write memorable lines? When you think about those lines that are things that people talk about and that are in the press, and it's like carpe diem. When you hear lines like that, it's like there was something that was done that had that line worked. And by the way, I actually talked with the writer of that particular story, Tom Schulman, and I'm talking about Dead Poets Society, and he told me how they designed that line, how they chose where it was going to go, how it was set up, the whole thing. We've analyzed those lines and found out exactly what makes them memorable and why they have so much of an impact. So you will be building those in. Then you're going to make sure that your ending is satisfying, surprising, and meaningful. And we'll go then to the opening scene. How do you make sure that it's incredible? Your opening scene should be the best writing you've ever done. And the reason why is because that opening scene either sells you as a writer or it doesn't. So it's not one of those things where you go, well, I want to have a slow opening. Just know inside this industry, When they look at your opening scene, they decide who you are as a writer. So the techniques we're going to give you here are incredibly important, and it'll make a huge difference. And finally, then it's about not only having description that describes what we see, but also gives it to us in a way that's emotional. Now, this, by the way, isn't about us violating, the tell, don't, or the show, don't tell rule. This is about how do you write that description? How do you write it in a way so people experience it on an emotional level? How do you have us, seeing what's happening, but also getting it on a deeper level? It will make a huge difference for you. Every step of this model, you will be learning and then immediately applying to your script. I promise you, by the time you're done with this, you will see rewriting in a whole different way. We had one guy who told me his script was absolutely perfect. He had had all his friends read it. They all said it was perfect. He went through this class. At the end of it, he said he went back and made 54 changes to that script. And it ended up winning Page, by the way. It won the grand prize at Page. So this makes a huge, huge difference. It's a tool you will use from now on. When you are working with managers, they'll respect that you know what you're doing. The normal price on this is $350. Let me give you a special. This is for the first 20 people who sign up. You can get in for $199. Now that saves you about a little over $150 on this program. I promise you, by the time you're done with this program, you will look back and you will say, this may have been one of the most important things that ever happened to your writing. So it is absolutely worth it. To join us, all you got to do is write down this link right here, bit.ly, bit.ly/I am rewriting. Write that down, no capitals, no spaces, bit.ly, bit.ly/I am rewriting. Put that in your browser where you normally put a web address, click return, and go through the sign-up process to join us. Every step you take in this program will make a difference for you. I promise you. That's why we built it. And it's the reason why we've had a lot of writers, and I'm talking over 500 who have made deals. We've had at least 100 that have come straight out of this program and ended up either winning contests or making a deal with a producer. So this can make a significant difference. It will elevate the quality of your writing. And it'll make you so much happier when you end up working with the professionals in this industry. So again, right now for the first 20, you can get in for $199, which saves you $150 on it. All you got to do is put that link into your browser where you normally put a web address, click return, and come join us. The class begins on January 22nd. That's a Monday night. Or Monday, it begins on January 22nd. And at that point, from that point on, you'll be getting 2 to 3 lessons every single week as you go through this. It'll give you time to do your rewrites every step of the way. And by the time you're done, you will have a script that you are blown away by. So other than that, listen, I want to say thank you guys for being with us. I hope you come join us for this. I promise you it'll make a huge difference for you. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, wishing you the absolute best. Bye-bye, everyone.